Okay, get ready for an idea that sounds, well, kinda nuts. What if a theologian from the 11th century, we're talking 900 years ago, actually had a better grasp on the fundamental nature of reality than someone like Isaac Newton? I know, it sounds completely outrageous, but today we're going to explore the absolutely stunning parallels between an ancient Islamic theological idea and the deeply weird world of modern quantum physics.
And it all boils down to one single, massive question that shakes the very foundation of how we see the universe. Is causality an illusion? You know, we see one thing happen, then another thing happens right after. We assume the first thing caused the second. But what if that connection isn't real? What if it's just something our minds have created?
Really, what we're looking at here is a clash of two totally different ways of seeing the world. On one side, you've got Newton's universe, a giant, predictable machine that just chugs along. And on the other, a truly radical idea that the universe is actually a continuous miracle, being reborn at every single instant. So, before we dive into the deep end, let's start with the familiar. Let's talk about the model of reality that, honestly, most of us just assume is true. This is the universe according to classical physics. For centuries, this was the bedrock of all science. The idea that the universe is basically a giant clock. You wind it up and it just runs according to fixed, unbreakable laws. Everything is smooth, continuous. You hit a billiard ball and you can predict exactly where it's going to go. It's simple, it's elegant, and as we're about to find out, it's maybe not the whole story. All right, now let's jump into Time Machine and go way back, about 900 years to be precise. I want you to meet a Persian thinker named Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali. He came up with a view of the world that was, especially for his time, just completely mind-bending. The idea Ghazali championed is called occasionalism. And here's the core of it in a nutshell. Things in the world don't actually cause other things to happen at all. Instead, there's only one true cause for everything, God, who is actively and directly recreating the entire universe from scratch in every single moment. Ghazali makes this super abstract idea really concrete with a famous example. Imagine you touch a piece of cotton with fire. We instinctively say the fire burned the cotton. Ghazali says, nope, the fire didn't cause a thing. The fire was just the occasion for God to create the act of burning in the cotton. God could just as easily decide to make the cotton turn to water. What we call the laws of nature aren't laws at all. They're just God's habits.
Now, think about what this really means. If this is true, then the universe isn't one continuous, flowing river of time. It's more like a movie projector. It's a series of distinct, separate still frames, each one a brand new creation. Our feeling of a smooth, continuous reality, that's just an illusion, created by how incredibly fast those frames are being swapped out.
So this might all sound like pretty heady theology, but here's where it gets truly fascinating. Ghazali's argument against cause and effect was also an incredible piece of pure philosophical logic, one that would pop up again in a huge way centuries later in the heart of Western philosophy.
Let's just walk through his reasoning, because it's stunning. He says, look really closely. When fire touches cotton, you never actually see the causation. You don't observe some magical force called burningness leap from the flame to the fabric. All you ever see is a sequence. First there's fire, next there's burning. The feeling that one has to follow the other, well, that's just a habit in our minds. It's not something that's actually out there in the world. And here is the kicker. 700 years after Ghazali, the legendary Scottish philosopher David Hume made a virtually identical argument. Hume's famous problem of induction became this pillar of Western thought. But Ghazali had already built the entire intellectual framework. The only real difference? Ghazali said the consistent pattern was God's habit, while Hume said it was a habit of the human mind. The parallel is just staggering. For centuries, Ghazali's idea was basically treated as a theological or philosophical curiosity. And then, the 20th century happened. Physics got weird. I mean, really weird. And that whole comfortable, predictable clockwork universe, it got completely blown apart.
The quantum revolution dropped a bombshell on us. It turns out that at the most fundamental, tiny level, reality isn't smooth. It isn't a continuous flow. It's grainy. It comes in little, indivisible packets.
I mean, just think about this. Energy isn't a fluid thing. It comes in little chunks called quanta. An electron in an atom doesn't smoothly glide from one orbit to another. It literally jumps. It's here, and then poof, it's there.
It never exists in the space between. At this level, nothing is guaranteed. It's all just probabilities. And some theories even suggest space and time are made of tiny pixels. All of a sudden, Ghazali's frames in a movie doesn't sound so strange anymore, does it?
And if you think that's wild, it gets even weirder. There's something called the observer effect. Basically, before you measure it, a particle doesn't really have a definite location. It exists as this fuzzy wave of probabilities. It's kind of everywhere at once. The very act of looking at it, of measuring it, seems to force that wave to collapse into one single real point. In a way, reality waits for us to look before it makes up its mind.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together, because when you place the 11th century theology right next to 20th century physics, the parallel isn't just interesting, it's downright astonishing.
Just look at this. The Ash'ari school of theology, which Ghazali was a part of, proposed that matter was made of discrete atoms and that time was made of indivisible moments. Quantum physics reveals a quantized reality, a pixelated universe at the tiniest of scales. The Ash'ari school proposed a continuous moment-by-moment divine creation. Quantum mechanics gives us the wave function, that cloud of possibilities collapsing into a single reality the moment it's observed. They explained regularity through God's habit. Physics explains it through fundamental constants and laws. It's a lot.
Now let's be absolutely crystal clear about something. This is not scientific proof of theology. It's not. What it is, though, is a profound and frankly startling resonance. It's two completely different ways of thinking, one based on faith and logic, the other on math and experiment, arriving at descriptions of reality that look eerily similar.
And of course, there are very strong counterarguments here. Scientists will rightly tell you that physics makes predictions you can actually go out and test, while theology doesn't. And philosophers, even back in Ghazali's own time, worried that if you say there's no natural cause and effect, why would anyone even bother to study science? And those are perfectly valid points.
Still, you can almost hear Ghazali's voice across those 900 years. He might look at all the bizarre weirdness of quantum mechanics, the jumps, the probabilities, the observer effect. And he might just nod and say, "See, I told you." He wouldn't see it as a puzzle. He'd see it as confirmation that the universe isn't some self-sufficient machine, but something much more fragile. Something that depends on a constant, moment-by-moment creative act.
So, where does all this leave us? Is it just a crazy 900-year-old coincidence? Is it just a fluke that an ancient theological model of the world happens to mirror our most advanced and bizarre science? Or could it be pointing to something deeper about the nature of existence itself? Now that is a question worth thinking about.